Pilgrim painting was a lot of fun to paint. Now I know I always say it about all my paintings, but this one really was. This is a good intermediate painting. The reason why it's a little bit harder was because drawing the design and the layout, it's a little bit of work, but isn't it cute? I mean, you're never going to grow as an artist if you never push yourself. So try it. Go ahead. I had a lot of fun painting this one, and I know that you will too. Feel free to change the colors and the designs if you want to, but all in all, this is a great one for Thanksgiving. It's going to look great on your wall. The things that I will need for this painting is a canvas. I have decided to use a 12-inch by 16-inch canvas today. I have already pre-drawn out my design. If you need help with that on your painting, I did write a short book that is about an hour read that explains the process on how to transfer the layout and the design of the image onto your canvas. You will also need a paper plate, some sort of thing to put your paint on. I think paper plates are a good idea because then at the end you can just throw them away. Very easy, simple. I use a lot of paper towels when I'm painting. I use them to wipe off my brushes. I also need water. I am using acrylic paint. I find that the picture for me works really good. Let's see. Also, I have this big square brush that I'm going to use. I have a medium-sized square brush and a small-sized square brush. I also, in every painting, always at some point enjoy using my Filbert Bright. It is a Filbert because it is not a square brush and it is not a round brush. It's kind of a little bit of both with the way that the fibers are trimmed. And it's also a bright because it has a lot of fibers right here that are tightly compacted, which makes it really nice for details. I also like to use my handy dandy hair dryer. I find that working with the hair dryer makes paintings a lot faster and fun for the techniques that I'm using, so that way I'm not waiting forever for everything to dry and I can just keep it going and moving forward. I'm expecting that this class is going to be around 1 to 2 hours. I try to keep them under 2 hours, so the hair dryer is really going to help to make sure that this painting doesn't last 5 million hours. Which could be a good thing and a bad thing. It depends on your style, your technique. If you want the paint to last longer, just spray a little bit of water onto your palette and your acrylic paint will stay moist longer. I always have a rule with myself that I enjoy painting and finishing the painting the same day. It helps me keep focused so that way I'm not wasting time and energy and going back and forth between multiple paintings. So for me, acrylic paint seems to work very well. Now I'm adding some blue to my palette, and I'm going to add some white, and I'm going to mix the two colors together so I can get a really nice light blue color. Now I'm going to start with doing the background first. I typically normally always start with the background and then move into the foreground, but it really just depends on the painting and the style that you're choosing to work with. Notice how when I did this, I'm only using a little portion of my plate. I've noticed that some of my students, they end up squirting tons of paint and using the whole palette at once, and then by the end of the painting, they're working with like 5 different paint palettes, and that can be annoying over time. So be careful with your paint so that you have some basic idea what's going on in your palette. I usually prefer to add the colors to the outside rim and then add the white in the middle. Therefore, I would have a second little ring around here where I can use for mixing. So just be cautious with that. I have already pre-sketched out my design. This is a very simple sketch, and if you need help with your sketch, I did write, it's a small book, a fairly large pamphlet. It's about an hour long. I have the link on my website where you can go to access it, and I explain the 6 different types of techniques. I put a lot of pictures in there and a lot of description on many different ways to get your design onto your canvas and make it work out. So with that being said, I'm going to start. Now I've chosen a light blue here, and this is going to be my background, and I'm choosing that my background is going to be a sky color. Now I've started noticing that with some of my paintings that I do, I always tend to put clouds in my painting, which is awesome. So one thing that I am kind of trying to do is make sure that all my paintings have their own personality and characteristics. So I'm going to try to make the weather in my paintings different. So that way it's like different scenes, different times of the year, different situations going on. So with this one, I am choosing not to add any clouds. And I'm going to say that it is a really nice, pretty day in my painting. There's no clouds, not a whole lot of weather going on. It's kind of warm for November. Just a nice, happy day. Now, if you wanted to make this more of a nighttime scene, you could totally do that. So like if they're having a late dinner or something, then you would just use a darker blue. And you could, if you wanted to do nighttime, you could do the stars. That would be really cool. So what I'm doing here is I'm applying the paint on the areas in which the two characters are not. So just the background areas. Now I'm not putting a whole lot of energy and effort into making sure that I follow my diagram of where I have laid out the color precisely. I'm just kind of letting it happen. So if I go over my pencil marks, that's okay. We can always put them back in and fill them in. It'll be fine. Especially when you're using a color that is not super dark. So for example, if my background color was going to be like a black, and then I wanted to go back over that and add like, let's say I wanted to make yellow and stuff like that, it's going to take a lot of coats for me to be able to cover up that black. But since I'm doing a light blue, it will take quite a few coats, a little bit, but it won't be as daunting of a task to do because it's not, I mean, it is a cool color, but it's not super, super cool. I do like to paint the sides of my paintings. I find that painting the sides makes the painting as an overall look complete. If you don't paint the sides, you can get a cool look with the unfinished look of the painting, and that could also be cool too, if done well. But I've noticed that when I sell my art in galleries and in craft fairs, I've noticed that if I do sell paint the sides, those paintings, they typically tend to have an easier time selling. So I just kind of make that my standard. Really just depends on the image and what I'm trying to do. I am going to kind of go down here with the blue just a little bit. Wrap it around. But I'm not going to do blue here because I'm going to extend their bodies a little bit. Otherwise it would appear as though they are kind of floating. And I don't want to do that. And I want you to keep in mind that painting should be something fun and enjoyable. So throughout this piece, enjoy the process, enjoy the time, have a good time, and love what you're doing. Because if you get in your head and you're like, I'm suck and I'm this bad painter and I can't draw it right and it's just not working out, what happens is you're going to be too stressed out to make cool, awesome chances, and those cool, awesome chances and happy mistakes that happen along the way, those are what makes our paintings look really cool. So don't deny yourself of having an awesome accident. If you can have an awesome accident, your painting might get that much cooler and better. So just let it be, enjoy yourself and have a good time, and your mood will definitely reflect on your painting and it'll turn out cool. So don't be all uptight. If you accidentally make a boo-boo, just allow the paint to completely dry and then go back and touch up the areas that you want to fix. But I recommend making sure that your paint is all the way dry before you start trying to touch up and fix areas. Because what happens is all you're going to do is create what we call mud, and it's just going to be all blah with the paint everywhere, and the paint's not going to want to adhere to the canvas. Okay, so I have painted my background. I like it. maybe I could come back here and get some of my brush strokes to get out a little bit, just going over it and over it many times to get rid of those brush strokes. That's about right. That's good. I like it. So I'm going to take excuse me, sorry. I'm trying not to sneeze. I got a little bit of allergies going on right now. I've been dealing with for the past 2 weeks, and I'm like, ugh. Okay, so I'm going to take my paintbrush and my paper towel. I'm going to wipe it across to get some of that paint off. Notice how I'm not pushing. I am just wiping. So I'm pulling away with the bristles. I'm going to go back into my pitcher over here, and I'm going to put the water in there, swish it around a little bit, and then because it's a pitcher, I can bend my bristles a little bit. Do you see how cool that is? Is that not cool? Right? That's why I like pitchers. Okay, so I came back over and I checked, and I still do have some blue, but for the most part, it's pretty much off. I'm going to set that aside. Now, I believe that as we do layers, it's a good idea to be able to dry what we have before we go on to the next step. So if you don't have a hair dryer, just pause the video and let it air dry. But for the sake of time, I'm going to be drying the video, drying the painting. So I'll see you in like a few seconds. About good. So I noticed here that I have a couple little spots here and there that are shiny, and these shiny areas just mean that the acrylic paint is not all the way dry yet. That's okay. I'm going to kind of stay away from those areas, but for the most part it's pretty ready to go. I like to give myself about 24 hours for the paint to completely harden before I consider it all the way dry and before I put my top coat and sealant on it. I would recommend you do the same thing. So, okay, so we have many different choices of what we can do here. Now, we can make our outfits whatever color. I am going to kind of stick to the basic idea of getting colors right out of the tube just to make this a little bit more simpler and easier to be able to do. So I have the blue background. Let's see. I live in an area where there's a lot of Amish people, and I know this is not Amish at all. However, I noticed that they like to stick with a lot of neutral tones, very simple colors for their clothing, and I kind of would assume that the Pilgrims back in the day would do the same thing as well. They were very, the Puritans, they were very simple, and they didn't like a lot of flash. So I'm going to go ahead and with the dark blue, which is just actually just blue, I'm going to go ahead and do her outfit. And I think I might do his brown. I'm going to think about that for a minute. You can always change it. Whatever colors you want, those are the colors I want you to use. If you want to put her in pink and him in blue, if you want to be zebra colors, I mean, whatever you want to do, let that happen. Because it's going to be an awesome painting if you choose and decide how you're going to do it. Then it's going to be super cool. I'm going to use my small square brush It's pretty much the same thing, it's just smaller areas I'm working with, so it's the reason I'm choosing to use a smaller brush. So I'm basically just going to cover the areas in which her clothing would be. Now, as I paint, something that will help me to make my painting look extra cool and fun is if I am painting in the way to allow brush strokes to occur naturally. And that's just going to add wrinkles in the fabric and just give it a little extra pop, a little extra dimension. So there's one arm, and now her body. I feel as though they kind of have their arms over each other just a little bit, but we don't really see. They're like hidden behind their bodies. So I'm just gonna go ahead and do her blouse area of her dress right here. And this is the moment in time in which it is a good idea to pre-sketch out the design onto the canvas. Now, if you need the outline, I have it, and it's on my website. So just go, type it in, check it out. Go around my website, you'll see it. It's right there. Just take a screenshot image and then print that out. Or if you have software and it's allowing you to print out, just print out the image. And then, I mean, if you want to, you could totally also be super brave and just do it by hand and come up with your design. I mean, that's really cool too. You're never ever going to become a good artist unless you're willing to take risks and try. So however you're comfortable with it, do that method. Personally, when I am doing this and it's in bulk, like if I'm doing a paint party and I'm expecting there to be like 50 students, then I find that using a projector for me onto the canvas is way easy to just bust them out and get them done with really quick, before the paint party. Sometimes I do them just sketching them out. It depends on the moment, what I'm doing that day, and how invested I am into it. But the one thing that does stay consistent is I try to only put details that I think that I'm going to need while I'm painting. So when I do the original design and I'm sketching it out, it's basically keep it simple. I'm sure you've heard the expression, keep it simple, stupid. That's pretty much the basic idea. Just keep the design simple. And then, you can always add on with the paint. This is just a basic roadmap. It's almost like trying to look at the map and see the freeways, the basic idea of where we're going and how we're going to get there. So I'm going to go ahead, and since I have this blue right now, I'm just going to take advantage and do the edges. Now, yes, I know that she is kind of blending in with the background itself, but I'm going to fix that at the end of the painting. We're going to do some line work, and she's going to really come out to the foreground, and we're going to see her really well. So I am still being mindful about those brush strokes, trying to keep them so that they're making sense and like wrinkles in the fabric, and it gives it a little homemade look. I want my painting to appear like a painting. I don't want it to look like a photograph. I want it to look like it's something homemade. There we go. I'm liking these wrinkles. Yeah. Okay, so that's good. I'm going to leave it at that. Let's see, I'm going to take my brush and wash it really quick. Now let's do him. I'm going to go ahead and get some brown. I'm going to use the same brush. Now, because I have the brown, I want to try to paint all the little areas that would be brown. So I'm going to paint his outfit brown, and then I'm also going to give him the leather that would be around for the buckle and around the hat. I'm going to make that brown as well. Oops. Ooh, I'm towards the end of this brown. washed my brush out, and I'm going to go ahead and do the buckle up here. I'm choosing to use my brush and make it go sideways, and by doing this sideways motion it will give me those brush strokes in there, and it'll make it feel as though the direction of the leather and how it's going. So it's a lot of implied lines. I'm going to do the same thing here on this side. It works. I like it. That's good. I'm going to leave it at that. So now I'm going to take the brown and I'm going to do the same thing with his shirt. I'm going to go ahead and do the pants. Now, because they're pilgrims, the women wore dresses and the men wore pants and blousey type shirts. I'm just going to really simplify this and just say that he's not really wearing a dress, but I'm making this very basic, and I mean, I want this image on purpose. I'm trying to make this look cartoony just a little bit. So I'm doing what's called hyper-realism, where I'm taking an idea and I'm just kind of making it make sense in my world of art. So that's why it's hyper-realism. So it's realism that it's, okay, it could happen, but then it's hyper in that I'm kind of changing it, making it my own, and turning it cartoony. I'm liking that. That looks really cute. Very happy with the look. Yep. Very cute. Okay, so he's got a little bow here. He's got a little collar. Oh, We should have put some blue right here. Of course I can fit that in. There's like a space right here between their two faces that should have a little bit of blue, but I'm gonna just make his cheeks a little bit more chubbier. So it'll all work out. Okay, so I'm gonna let that dry. Over here where I kind of caked it on a little bit is very shiny, but like right here where I didn't really cake it on is pretty dry. So I'm gonna go ahead and how about we work with the hat and the bonnet. Okay, so for his, I'm gonna make his hat black and I'm gonna make hers white. We want them to be very similar, but yet still be their own person. So they have their own uniqueness about them. So I washed my brush. I'm making sure that I get all of the paint out. So now I'm going to go with the white. Now because I'm using white, I'm going to put it in the middle of my palette. And this is my designated spot where I like to put white. So remember how I told you earlier about placing your colors and your pigments on the outside rim and then putting the white in the middle. So that way, like for example, if I wanted to make this this value of this brown a little bit lighter, I can bring over some white, bring over some brown, and mix a lighter brown here. So I can keep that theory going on around the palette, the plate. So okay, we're gonna go with white. Now let's see, her bonnet, she's got it big and then she's got the little veil in the middle. So I'm gonna go ahead with the white and I'm just gonna cover it. Now technically you don't need to, because I'm not mixing colors here. I'm getting them straight out of the tube. So I don't really need to do any color mixing. Well, I mean, I don't have to really apply the white. However, I'm going to choose to apply white. So that way, in the event that this painting is hung in a location where there are smokers or there's mold or different things, this paint will protect the canvas that's underneath and it'll stay white longer. Also, remember how I said earlier, if you have a really cool color and then you put a warm color on top of it, you're going to need to have a few coats to really cover. Like there's some blue there. It's not showing up on the camera that well, but I can see that in life here with the lights, I can see that blue shining through. Oh no, wait. I accidentally bumped into this and got brown into my sky. Be careful with that. Sometimes I lay my arm or my hand down on the canvas, like right here. Do you see I got a bunch of brown now? All right, so I'm going to go ahead with the white here. Now when you have a lighter color and you're going over the pencil marks, you can see through them. You're going to have to do a couple coats or really cake on the paint to really cover them lines. That's why when I do it, I try to make my lines very light, so that way I don't have a lot going on. Watercolor pencils work really great for doing this line work when you're first laying out the design, because then you can use the colors in which you're planning to use, so then they kind of blend in easier. Seems about good. I have a nice coating. Yeah, I like it. It's a good one. Nice little coating of white everywhere. Okay, so I'm going to allow that to dry. And while that's drying, I'm going to now do his hat. So notice how I'm going back and forth between areas. This really helps me to keep the pace of the painting going. Some of my students, you guys have paint and sip parties, and you need to keep your class going at a moderate pace, otherwise your students are going to get like annoyed and bored. So by doing the back and forth method, then you can ensure the pace to, you know, so that way it's not like a 5-hour painting, because I've noticed that my students will become very agitated after like 3 hours is about a good mark. 2 hours, 2 to 3 hours, anything after 3 hours, people that aren't painting regularly and just doing it as a fun hobby, they typically tend to get fatigued, and you don't want your students to be fatigued, because then they're going to be annoyed. And then they might not come back to another class. So when you're teaching a painting class, keep the pace going, keep it at a good speed, but also don't go too fast. Just watch your people. But having them go back and forth is a good way to keep them engaged, keep them going. And it's also good as a rule of thumb when you're painting yourself that you want to keep it interesting and fun and lighthearted. And sometimes it's good to take a break and come back to something. So if you're trying to do this all in one sitting, a way in which to take a break would be just paint some other area of the canvas. And then, you know, you come back and like 5 minutes later, you come back and redo something and you see it with fresh eyes again. Now I need to be very careful because this white over here is still wet, and I don't want to pull some white in over, because then it's going to turn a little bit gray there, and I just want to have a sharp edge of black. This is such a fun painting and such a cute one to hang for Thanksgiving and for the fall season. It's just a lovely, wholesome painting. Now, okay, so I have had students ask me before about culture appropriation. I myself am descendant. My mom was from Mexico and my dad is born and raised in Germany. My mom was born and raised in Mexico. So I have no history that I am aware of Pilgrims in my family. So here I am painting a painting of Pilgrims. So technically, yeah. I mean, these are Puritans over here, and I'm kind of culture appropriating a little bit because of that, because I'm not a descendant of the, and I think there are descendants of the original colonists that are still around, but this is still fun and lighthearted. Like, I do sugar skulls a lot, and that's a class I teach a whole bunch. And when I'm teaching the class, I don't freak out because there are non-Hispanic people in my classes that are painting sugar skulls. I personally don't freak out. I feel if at anything, they are participating in something that's fun and a cultural experience, a learning experience, and they're celebrating with me as I'm painting sugar skulls. And, you know, so for me personally, I'm not offended. Now, I had a boyfriend a million years ago that had, his grandma had a picture of what they call the lazy Mexican, and it was like this guy sitting down sleeping while he should be working. He's got his big sombrero and he's all fat with the beer belly and the bottle of alcohol next to him. And when I seen the image up on her wall, I was like, oh, okay, whatever, you know. I just, how about we just, you do you and I'll do me, and I'll see you when I see you. So, I mean, if it's done in a tasteful way and it's respectful art, then I don't mind. If y'all want to paint a piñata with me, let's paint piñatas. They're fun. So, yeah, so just do the art and do it in a respectful manner, and I think you should be fine. is a great time to do the pumpkins. The reason why is because I want to do the skin and I want to do the hair. However, remember how I have a theory that goes we do the background first and then we work into the foreground. So the hair would be on top of the skin. Now right here we have their hands, and their hands are on top of the pumpkins. So because of that, that's why I'm going to choose the pumpkins next. I'm going to go ahead and use orange, yellow, and brown to paint pumpkins. Now pumpkins are actually quite simple. They really are. It just takes a little bit of back and forth and back and forth, and they don't happen right away. You got to give them a minute, but it happens. They occur. Okay, so I'm adding a little bit of orange and a little bit of yellow. Now, have you noticed that I'm only taking out a little bit of paint at a time as I use it? This is on purpose. What I'm doing is I want to keep the paint moist and ready for when I need it. So if I take all my paint out at the beginning of the painting and then I go to paint, it's going to dry by the time 2 hours is ended. So that's why I'm going a little bit at a time. I'm going to start with the pumpkins that are behind and then work in the middle one at the end. So I'm going to apply the orange. And my goal right now at this moment is to apply, just get orange all over the white areas. Now with the other clothes, I did make it very simple, straight out of the tube. But now with the pumpkins, we're going to take it up just a little bit of a notch and make the painting a little bit more difficult. But trust me, you got this. You can do this. I know you got this. So we're going to do a technique where we're going to blend on the canvas. So I'm applying the orange. And then once I like what I have with the orange, I'm going to go back and apply some brown and some yellow to try to make those curves of a pumpkin. Now, oftentimes when I paint a painting, I prefer to, even though this is very cartoony, I still took some time this fall to stare at some pumpkins for a minute and really, look at them and think about it. And I mean, yeah, we go with a look. We already know, duh, I know what a pumpkin is. But what happens is if you take a moment where you're actively contemplating and you think about it and you're like, okay, well, it has that shade and that's an interesting shade, and okay, this little curve right here, then I find that when I do that, and then I go to paint an item, I tend to do a much better job. Like, my paintings come out, like, way cooler. And so, yeah, so I recommend take a moment, stare at a pumpkin. Like, really think about it, about, like, what shades of orange are you actually seeing? Not what you think you see, but what is the true look that you're seeing right there? Okay, so I have the orange. Now, if you want, you can leave it at this. This is totally cute. Or you can add some extra oomph to it. So I'm going to add some extra oomph by going into some yellow. And just where I think it would be a highlight as to where the light would be bouncing off. And I am going to be thinking about lines and the direction and the way that my brush is going, because I'm creating those lighter areas and some darker areas, and I want to try to keep my brush strokes vertical with a slight curve to them. Then it'll give a sense of, I don't know, motion, I guess, to the painting. So you got little lines and some light areas, some dark areas. I didn't really fully cover up the orange. I just kind of covered up the orange. So that's cool. I'm going to let that dry for a minute. I think I'm going to come back and hit it with some brown. But first, I'm just going to let that do its thing for a moment. So I'm going to go back over here with the orange on this side. And I'm going to do the same thing. I'm just going to try to apply the orange everywhere that I want the orange to be for this pumpkin. At first, I'm just kind of caking on the color and just letting the color be what it is. However, since I am in acrylic paints, I am trying to work quickly so that they don't dry. So that way I can still kind of mix on the palette, on the plate, or on the canvas. I don't want a whole lot of mixing, but a little bit of mixing is kind of cool. And I'm going to be mindful with those brush strokes. And this pumpkin, he was a big pumpkin, so he kind of wraps around a little bit on the side of my canvas. Now yours doesn't have to wrap on the side. If your drawing didn't like work, that this guy is like kind of on the side of the canvas, don't worry about it. Let your painting be your painting. All right, so I got orange. Now I'm going to go back and work out these brush strokes and try to, so I'm on the left side of the pumpkin, I am trying to make letter C strokes. And then on the right side of the pumpkin, that stroke kind of reverses and it turns into a backwards C stroke. See that? Backwards. And then in the middle, they just kind of get more vertical and less bendy as a C until they kind of come together. But like right now, I'm on the right side of the pumpkin. I'm doing backwards C type strokes. And I am trying to keep the strokes going somewhat vertical with a slight bend on them. Okay, it's coming out pretty cool. I'm liking it. All right, so now I'm going to go back in with a little bit of yellow and do the same thing and just try the whole point. Oops, yellow. The whole point is to get stripes happening and a little bit of blending occurring in some spots. Now, when doing pumpkins for the first time, sometimes it's a good idea to just do a pumpkin without having all these little things going on, like with the arm wrapping around and stuff. It does make doing the pumpkin a tad bit harder because there's more going on. The more that you're diligent in paying attention to doing those C strokes, the awesomer those pumpkins are going to turn out. Because they're gonna come together. It's gonna look really well, really nice. Now, if one pumpkin happens to be a little lighter than the other, that's perfect, because then that means each pumpkin has its own little identity and it lives in its own little world. We want each pumpkin to have a personality. Yeah, looks good. Maybe I can blend this a little bit more. And just, until you're happy. When you're happy with what you got, stop. All right, I'm going to allow this to dry for a little bit. I mean, I could go in with some brown. I just feel this is a little drier. This is more cakey. You know what? I'm going to allow it to dry and then I'll come back over it. Otherwise, it's going to be too blendy blend. That's not really what I'm going for at the moment. All right. Since I have some yellow out, I'm going to go ahead and do this buckle. Everything around the buckle on his hat seems to be dry. So I want to be careful I don't get any of that orange that I have in the yellow. I want to be able to come to the side here and just put it in. I am probably going to have to cake it up a little bit to get on some of the areas that are brown and black so I have good coverage. Oh, you know what I forgot to do? I forgot to paint the inside of the buckle brown. I completely, totally spaced that out. That's okay. No, it's fine. Well, once this dries, we can come back over with some brown and it'll be good as new. Now, I recommend, since this yellow is very warm, that you make sure that all your surrounding area is really dry before you add the yellow, because it's really gonna, like if you have the black in there and it's still wet, what's gonna happen is that it's gonna pull over and make your yellow pretty much black. So I can kind of cover, if we're gonna go with the dark browning, kind of cover those lines a little bit, because the brown, when I put the brown there, it's really gonna cover up well on that area. All right, so I'm gonna let that dry before I do the brown in the middle. Now she has yellow hair. Yeah, I'm gonna give her yellow hair. Now, when it comes to hair, if you follow the direction of the way that the hair is growing and the strands, the path in which they take, your brush will make natural lines as it presses and moves around the paint. And that's really cool to have movement in the hair. Now, if you don't apply a lot of paint, and if you're not applying a lot of paint and you blend, now what's going to happen is your brush strokes are going to go away and you really won't see them. The more that you work on it, and then like without it drying, they're going to disappear. Especially they'll disappear if you have thin bodied paints, which typically tend to be cheaper quality paints. They don't really hold ridges that well. Thicker body paint's thicker, it takes well longer to dry, and it sometimes if you have good quality thick bodied paint, you can really get those ridges in there. I am using a medium thick bodied paint, so I'm not using the really expensive stuff, and I'm not using the cheap stuff either. If you're serious about painting, I recommend having the experience of trying the different types of acrylic paints, because they're good for different reasons. You know, just because it's cheap don't mean it's a bad paint. It just, you know, it only behaves differently. Okay, so let's see. Let's go ahead and work on this guy. Yeah. I don't want his hair to be yellow. I'm going to make his a little bit light brown. But I still need the brown. Before I go mixing what I have and everything, I'm going to let that dry. So let's go ahead, and no need to wash my brush or anything. And I'm just going to apply this orange in the middle. Now I am still trying to keep that C motion going on. And see, this side I want to go backwards C. Excuse me. All right. Okay, so now I have orange. I'm going to go ahead and try to fix my little C's here with my lines. Okay, so now I'm going to wipe off a little bit of this, and I'm going to go back into my yellow, and just like what I did with the other pumpkins, I'm going to do the same thing here. Now, it's not showing up really great on the camera, but in life, now here that I'm looking at it, I can see it. It's there, the yellow and the orange. It's very subtle too. That's looking good. I like that. It's looking good. Very, very super subtle. All right, so while we're waiting for that, I'm going to take a quick moment and use the hairdryer to dry everything. Ahead and fill in the buckle. Make sure I get all of the color off my paintbrush. Try to make sure that I have those brush strokes going horizontal just to keep continuity. All right, so now let's do his hair. Now I want the hair to be a slightly different brown, otherwise it's just too much brown. So I'm gonna add a little bit of white to this brown that I already have. Mix that in and make a lighter brown. You know what? This is actually not a good brown for the hair. This might be a better brown for skin. I'm not feeling this brown. Yeah, okay, so decisions. I mean, that's what it's gonna look like, right? I'm not feeling it. Not feeling it. Let's see if we add some black in there. See what goes on. We turn it gray. Oh, nope, not feeling the gray either. Yeah, not feeling it. Okay. So by now my paper towel is looking like this. So go ahead and get yourself a new fresh paper towel. I do have a lighter brown over here. I have a little, see how that goes. Yeah, I like this better. It's not much of a difference. It's a little bit. I'm going to continue with how I had the grains of the hair going earlier. I'm going to make sure that I'm kind of following the line. I'm going to try to keep that part in the hair. So I'm going to start my strokes from where the part is. I did go up onto the hat on accident a little bit. It's fine because it's black, so at the end I can go back and fix it. So I'm starting and ending these strokes at where the hair is parted. Those natural lines of the hair strands are forming as I paint. There we go. So I'm going to let it dry and I'll probably go back and touch it with some brown, touch it up with brown. I'm going to use this brown and I'm going to do the stems of the pumpkins. It's not really showing up on the camera, but I do see here that the browns that I've chosen to use are slightly different. The one I'm using now is a little bit lighter than the other one. All right, it's coming out pretty good. So I was thinking we could work on some skin tones. So skin tone is actually quite very simple. They are Puritans, so they were Caucasian in color. So I'm going to kind of keep true to that. I am using orange, and I'm going to add some white to the orange. Make sure I wash out my brush really good. Now it sounds weird. I know it sounds weird, but trust me. If we mix them together, what's going to happen is we're going to get a peach tone. See that? A little bit of a warm peachy tone. Not quite orange. If we had a little bit of red, it would be a little bit more orange. Okay, I'm going to add just a hint of yellow to try to lighten it up a little. Now this is supposed to be really cartoony on purpose. So if I was trying to do more photographic images, then I would have like about 5 different skin tones that I would want to create while I'm painting this painting. But I want this to be cartoony, so I'm just going to give them one skin tone. Now I'm going to kind of work at it a little bit to try to not have brush strokes on his skin. So I'm just going to keep wiping and wiping. It's going to be drying on the canvas as I'm wiping, and by doing that, it'll help me get rid of those lines. So the more I stick with it, that I'm wiping it as it dries, the more that these lines are just going to kind of go away. I kind of did it in a little bit of a circle there. So I'm going to go ahead and do the same little color over here for this side of the face. It's looking cute. I like it. It's working. So now that I have this color, I'm going to go ahead and do the hands. I did get some orange onto where the fingers are. That just means I'm going to cake on the paint a little bit to try to cover that orange so I can get that flesh tone. And I'm going to give the fingers little bumps so that way they have individual little fingers here. Oops, I kind of lost my bumps. Oh no. That's okay, just make it up. Make it happen. It's looking very lovely. Yep. Okay, so let's see. Feel like we should work on that leaf while we wait for some of the stuff to dry. So with the leaf, I'm going to use a dark green. Oops, oh no. Oh geez, I hate it when I waste green. That was a lot, I didn't need that much. Okay. We're gonna go ahead and bring that down here. Now I'm gonna apply the paint. And then I'm going to start from the bottom of the leaf and swipe up. Getting those brush strokes, and this is going to make veins appear on my leaf, and it's going to look really cool. I'm going to do both outsides first. Get those nice little points in there, and then work on the middle section of the leaf. Giving the leaf a little bit of a bump. I think I added too much paint, so I'm going to wipe it off. A little bit of a curve and a bump is really good to do. There's a little personality. There, I like it. Looks good. All right, so I'm going to give it a quick dry, and as I'm drying it, I'm going to be looking at my painting for any little boo-boos and mistakes and things that I would like to fix along the way. I recommend that you do the same thing. my small Filbert Bright brush. It's a little tiny brush. And I'm going to go ahead and do the eyes. I'm going to dip them into the black and do little circles. Now, I would recommend taking time and doing this accurately so your people don't look cross-eyed and all weird. Unless that's what you're going for, which could be totally silly and cute. I'm going to make sure that I do really nice little circles here. I'm going to go ahead and do this one. Now, if you mess up and you have to go back over with that peach tone, it's going to take a long time for, yeah, you have to do many, many, many coats to cover up that black. I did a nose. It's a little frowny face for the nose, and then a smiley for the mouth, and then little C's, one to the right and one to the left. Little tiny commas on each side of the mouth. Dot, dot, frowny face, smiley face, comma going to the right, comma going to the left. And we're going to do the same thing with the face. We're going to put 2 dots for the eyes. I'm going to do a little frowny face for the nose. I'm going to do a smiley face for the mouth. And I'm going to give 2 little commas on both sides of the mouth. Now my hairline, excuse me, did go back out into my hat a little bit, so I'm going to take a moment here and re-outline that. Get that hairline nice and crisp, because the hat is supposed to be kind of coming up over. There we go. So far, so good. Let's see. I feel as though I need to add another layer of white here. Now, we didn't do the necktie and her collar, and those should be in white as well. So I'm going to continue with my Filbert Bright because I'm working on a very small surface. I'm going to get some fresh white and put fresh white onto my palette. Go here on the collar and just do the white. He had a little bit of a chubby cheeks going on over here. I'm probably gonna have to cake up the paint a little bit to cover up the color of his skin. Oh, looks cute. Okay, so his little bow tie. I'm going to give him a white collar. And then I think I want to make his bow tie yellow. So I'm going to come over here and do the collar of the shirt, because he's wearing kind of like an overcoat type jacket. Now I like to use smaller brushes when it comes to detail work, and the big brushes when it comes to covering up large spaces. Now, this little tiny brush I have, if you had a large space like the background, you could theoretically use a smaller one. It just takes longer. You would get a lot of brush strokes in there, which could look pretty cool, even for a large space. And then it's also, if you did that method, it's kind of, in a way, like a sense of just going through the motions and playing with the paint itself. And that could be like really fun and restorative, you know? Like, I'm sure by now you feel very relaxed and calm. I know I do. After, it's almost meditative a little bit to come and paint and just not have to focus on the world's problems and just hanging out and having a good time. Thanks for painting with me today. I feel totally relaxed. So I got his little collar going. I'm going to go ahead and wash my brush. I have no more yellow on my palette, so I'm going to need to add a little bit more yellow. I'm just going to fill it in. These are coming out so cute. This is just a fun painting. I have a little bit of hair right here that I can see my pencil mark. I'm going to put a little bit more yellow here just to try to go over some of those pencil marks. So if you have the same problem, go ahead and do that. I like to have crisp, clear edges. Working out nicely. Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and let's see, how about we add some little whites in their eyes? Wouldn't that be adorable? And we should also add the brown for the pumpkin. So this is not quite dry yet. I still see that it's shiny. So I'm gonna go ahead. I kind of ran out of my dark brown, but I do have this brown. So I'm gonna go and I wanna add some areas of where this brown might be. It's got some blue there I just wanted to cover up. And I'm going to, just exactly how I had the yellow earlier, I'm going to do the same thing but this time I have brown. And so what I'm doing is I'm creating those little divots that happen in pumpkins. This is like a shadow. And I am kind of blending just a little bit, but I mean the paint is dry, which is what I wanted. So I'm not going to blend a whole lot, just a little bit. And I'm keeping in mind of the idea of those curvy areas of the pumpkin. Trying to keep in mind those C's and then the backwards C's. Trying not to allow those lines to get really thick. I'm just letting them be a little bit what they are. It's almost just like they wanted, all they want to do is make like a hint. So if you have a spot in your pumpkin that you're like, oh, that part didn't turn out that well, this is a good time that you can kind of hide those areas a little bit and paint over them. I don't know if you can hear that, but I have a birdie. I have 2 birdies. And they're saying, hey, come hang out with me. Come love me. That's what that sound is over there. I'm going to do one little one over here, and I'm going to let it go around the edge. That's pretty good. I mean, I don't want to fuss with it too much. Less is more when it comes to the pumpkin. Wash my brush. Okay, so I'm going to do a little bit of outlining on my painting, but before I do that, I do see that there are some areas that are still very much wet. So I don't get a gray color. I'm going to go ahead and use my hair dryer and dry as much as I can everything. And put some whites in their eyes. Now the way I'm going to do it is I'm going to flip my brush over and use the bottom part, which is the wood part of my brush, not where I have fibers. I'm going to dip it into the white, and then I'm going to go and kind of like he's looking over to the left a little bit, and we're going to make her look to the right just a little bit. Just kind of looking up there. They're both kind of looking up. That's cute. I like it. They're a little cross-eyed. That's okay. It just makes them a little cuter. Now, we can call the painting done. It's totally cute. I love it. It works. It's great. But I'm going to make this painting pop a little bit. And the way I'm going to do it is by adding some outlines. So I'm going to outline her hat with the little tiny brush. I'm going to use the color black. This is going to add to the cartooniness of the painting. Now, this area is like a flap that comes up. So I'm going to turn this really slightly to be easier for myself when I draw it. But I'm going to do a little frowny face right here. And it's going to symbolize how her bonnet is kind of flipped up. See how that just gives so much more character? It really makes it pop. So now we can do the same thing elsewhere. I'm going to go ahead and do his little hand over here. It's really going to make his hand pop. See how it just, you see it so much better now. I'm going to do the same thing, and I'm going to outline their outfits. He's got a little bit of an arm here, so I'm going to go ahead and do that as well. I'm going to need to turn this canvas just a little bit. Make sure I get a really nice straight curvy area over here. If you need to turn your canvas when you're painting, go ahead and do that. I think it's quite healthy to turn the painting and see it and work at it from different angles. let's see, what else do we want to outline? Let's do the division of their bodies over here. And that would follow down to here. It's these little details that really just make this painting awesome. All right, so we have that. I'm going to go ahead and do the inside of his buckle. I think I'm going to do the outside as well. Just to keep up because of brush strokes, so when it dries, I'm going to go ahead and do these ones too as well. So when it dries, you'll kind of see how the paint has the brush strokes of the paint. And it's fixed like right here. And it's getting a little bit of gray there. It wasn't all the way dry. All right. Let's go ahead. I'm going to do so that these stems pop out just a little bit. Kind of like that. I'm just going to do upside down triangles. I'm not going to complete the triangle. There we go. Little upside down triangles. I'm liking it. Yeah. So I feel that on this step that I feel sometimes it happens to me where I outline a little too much and then I don't like what I did. So I'm going to I think I'm going to leave it at that. I think, yeah, what I got going on here is really cute. I'm going to let it be. Yep. Otherwise, it's kind of like the less is more idea. Yeah. Well, thanks so much for painting with me today. I feel so relaxed and this was a good exercise. I just totally enjoyed it. Yeah, I love hanging out with you. It's a lot of fun. So, yeah, I'm going to keep coming up with fun ideas and different cool things. And please, if you would like to, I would love to see how your painting turned out. Please email it to me or send me on social media. I'm on all of the channels. And I would definitely love to see what you got going on. And, yeah, I'll see you next time.